What made you stop trusting professionals with your child? My son Lucas had a stutter that made other kids laugh at him in first grade. The pediatrician recommended a speech therapist named Miss Diane, who worked out of her home office on the east side of town. She had incredible reviews online, parents calling her a miracle worker, and her rate of $85 per session seemed reasonable. Lucas started going twice a week after school, and the improvement was immediate. Within 2 weeks, his stutter had decreased noticeably. By week 3, he was speaking in full sentences without any hesitation. I was thrilled. My wife Emma kept saying we'd found the perfect therapist, but then Lucas started using phrases that seemed off. He'd say things like actualize your potential and cognitive dissonance during normal dinner conversation. When I asked where he learned those words, he'd shrug and say, Miss Diane taught him. I figured she was just expanding his vocabulary as part of the therapy. Then he started knowing things he shouldn't know. One morning, he told me not to take Highway 52 to work because there would be an accident near the Jefferson exit. I laughed it off, but took Highway 52 anyway. There was an accident, exactly where he said. I asked him how he knew, and he said Miss Diane told him during their session the day before. That seemed impossible. How would a speech therapist know about an accident that hadn't happened yet? I mentioned it to Emma, but she said Lucas probably misremembered the conversation. Maybe Diane had mentioned accidents happen on that stretch of road frequently. I wanted to believe that. Lucas started having nightmares. He'd wake up crying, saying he didn't want to go to therapy anymore. When I asked why, he'd just say he was tired. But his speech was perfect now, completely fluent, so we kept the appointments going. I noticed he'd come home from sessions exhausted, like he'd been running for hours instead of sitting in an office talking. His eyes would be red, and he'd go straight to his room and sleep until dinner. Miss Diane said this was normal, that therapy was mentally draining for children. Then Lucas started talking about the recordings. He mentioned them casually one night while brushing his teeth. He said Miss Diane recorded every session and played them back to him, making him listen to his own voice over and over. I asked if I could hear the recordings, and he said they were only for therapy purposes. I called Miss Diane the next morning and asked about her recording policy. She got defensive immediately, saying all therapists record sessions for quality assurance and that it was standard practice. But when I asked to review the recordings of Lucas's sessions, she said they were confidential therapeutic materials and I'd need a court order. That response seemed extreme. I started researching her credentials and found her license was valid, but when I dug deeper, I discovered she'd worked at a research facility before becoming a private therapist. The facility specialized in behavioral modification studies. I showed up 15 minutes early to Lucas's next appointment without telling Miss Diane I was coming. Her house was in a quiet neighborhood, and through the front window, I could see into what looked like her office. Lucas was sitting in a chair wearing headphones, his eyes closed, and Miss Diane was standing behind him holding what looked like a tablet, watching something on the screen intently. I knocked on the door. Miss Diane jumped, startled, and quickly removed Lucas's headphones and turned off the tablet before letting me in. She asked why I was early, and I said I wanted to sit in on the session. Her face went pale, and she said that wasn't possible, that children couldn't make progress with parents present. I insisted. We argued for 5 minutes while Lucas sat there silently, staring at the floor. Finally, I told her we were leaving and wouldn't be coming back. She grabbed my arm, and her grip was surprisingly strong. She said Lucas needed to finish the program, that stopping now could cause irreversible damage to his development. I pulled my arm free, took Lucas's hand, and walked out. As we got to the car, I looked back at the house. Miss Diane was standing in the window, watching us with an expression that made my skin crawl. That night, I went through Lucas's backpack and found a small digital recorder hidden in the side pocket. I pressed play, and what I heard made me call the police immediately. The rest of the story is on my channel or linked below. The police arrived within 20 minutes of my call. 2 officers, a man and woman, stand in our living room while I play the recording for them. Their expressions grow more concerned with each passing second. I need you to be absolutely certain of what you're hearing, the female officer says, her notepad already filled with details. What's on the recording is unmistakable. Miss Diane's voice, calm but commanding, guiding Lucas through what can only be described as hypnotic techniques. Focus on my voice, Lucas. Only my voice matters now. When I count to 3, you'll remember everything we've practiced. 1, 2, 3. Then phrases about cognitive restructuring and behavioral imprinting. Instructions for Lucas to repeat phrases back to her. Commands to forget certain parts of their sessions. She's been hypnotizing my son. I say, my voice barely steady. And there's something about predictions, highway accidents, things he couldn't possibly know. Emma paces behind me, shaking her head. There has to be some explanation. Miss Diane has helped Lucas so much, his stutter is completely gone. The male officer asks to speak with Lucas, but when we check his room, he's finally fallen asleep after hours of refusing to talk about his sessions. His face is peaceful for the first time since we left Miss Diane's house. We'll need to get a warrant to search her residence, the female officer explains. In the meantime, I suggest you take your son for a medical examination tomorrow. If there's any possibility he was given substances during these sessions, we need to know. Emma's face goes pale. Substances? You think she drugged our son? The idea hits me like a physical blow. It would explain so much. The red eyes, the exhaustion after sessions, his inability to remember certain details. By morning, we learn the police executed a search warrant at Miss Diane's house overnight. They call us to come to the station where they show us photographs of what they found. A hidden room behind her office bookshelf containing sophisticated recording equipment, dozens of labeled tapes with children's names, and a collection of unmarked medication vials. We've sent the substances for analysis, the detective explains, but based on preliminary tests, we believe some of these are sedatives not approved for use in the United States. Emma finally breaks down, sobbing as she stares at the photos. I recommended her to other parents. I told everyone how wonderful she was. We take Lucas to the hospital that afternoon. The doctor is gentle with him, explaining they need to take some blood to make sure he's healthy. Lucas remains quiet, withdrawn, but compliant. When the doctor asks if Miss Diane ever gave him anything to drink during their sessions, Lucas nods slowly. Special tea, he whispers, to help my words come out better. The test results confirm our worst fears. Traces of a sedative compound and something the toxicologist can't immediately identify. It appears to be experimental, he explains. We're consulting with specialists. That evening, Lucas wakes up screaming from a nightmare. When I rush to his room, he's sitting upright, eyes wide with terror. She's in my head, Dad, he sobs. I can still hear her counting. While Emma comforts Lucas, I start researching Miss Diane Diane more thoroughly. What I find shatters any remaining doubt. Her therapy license is registered to someone who died 3 years ago. Her claimed educational credentials are fabricated. And the research facility where she worked specializes in something called cognitive restructuring in developing minds. The police call the next morning. They found connections between Miss Diane and at least 7 other children in our area. Parents are coming forward with similar stories. Children using advanced vocabulary, knowing things they shouldn't know, experiencing nightmares and exhaustion. One father tells the detective his daughter predicted a power outage 3 days before it happened. Another says his son started speaking fluent Spanish after sessions, despite never studying the language. I'm sitting at the kitchen table reviewing the police reports when Emma gets a text message. Her face drains of color as she shows me the screen. Lucas is special. The work isn't finished. Don't interfere or there will be consequences. Some doors can't be closed once opened. The message is from an unknown number, but we both know it's from Miss Diane. I immediately call the detective handling our case, who tells us to stay home while they try to locate her. That night, we double-check all the locks. I move Lucas's bed into our bedroom, and we take turns staying awake. Emma finally admits what I've known all along. This was never about fixing a stutter. What did she do to our son? Emma whispers in the darkness. Lucas stirs in his sleep between us, mumbling something that sounds like Highway 52, Exit 16, tomorrow at 3:17. I record his words in my phone, a chill running through me. The next morning, we learn from the police that they've obtained files from the research facility where Miss Diane worked. The documents reference a classified behavioral modification program testing the limits of suggestion and perception in children. The facility's director denies any knowledge of Miss Diane's private practice, claiming she was terminated for ethical violations 2 years ago. By afternoon, 3 more families have contacted the police. Their children all saw Miss Diane for various issues: ADHD, selective mutism, anxiety. All show the same patterns: advanced vocabulary, exhaustion after sessions, nightmares, and occasional predictions that come true. At exactly 3:17 p.m., my phone buzzes with a news alert. Major accident on Highway 52 near Exit 16. Multiple vehicles involved. I look at Lucas, who's sitting quietly drawing at the kitchen table. He doesn't react to the news, doesn't seem to remember his prediction. But when I ask him to show me his drawing, my blood runs cold. It's a crude but recognizable sketch of a car crash, with a clock in the corner showing 3:17. Lucas, I ask carefully, what else did Miss Diane teach you to do? He looks up at me with those innocent eyes, suddenly clear and focused. She said I'm special, Dad. She said there are things in my head now that no one can take out. I pull Emma aside and show her the drawing. We make a decision then and there. Whatever Miss Diane has done, whatever experiment she was running, we'll do everything in our power to protect our son and find answers. That night, we turn our home into a fortress. Blinds drawn, security system armed, taking shifts to watch over Lucas. We know this is just the beginning of whatever Miss Diane has set in motion, and that the recording I found was only the tip of something much darker. I can't help wondering how many other children are out there, speaking in phrases they don't understand, predicting events they shouldn't know about, all while their parents believe they've found the perfect therapist. Lucas wakes up screaming at 3 a.m., his body convulsing in violent tremors. I rush to his side, but when I touch his skin, it's burning hot and slick with sweat. Emma, call 911, I shout, trying to hold Lucas still as his eyes roll back. His small body jerks and twists under my hands with surprising strength. Something's wrong with him, Emma cries into the phone. My son is having some kind of seizure. Please hurry. The paramedics arrive in minutes that feel like hours. Lucas's tremors have subsided into uncontrollable shivering, his teeth chattering so hard I worry they might crack. One of the EMTs takes his temperature 103.8 while the other checks his pupils. Has he taken any medications recently? The female paramedic asks, already preparing an IV. No, but I hesitate, then tell them everything about Miss Diane, the recordings, the police investigation, the tea she gave him. The hospital found something in his system yesterday, but they weren't sure what it was. They exchange glances before loading Lucas onto the stretcher. We need to move now, the male EMT says. This looks like severe withdrawal. At the hospital, doctors rush Lucas to the pediatric intensive care unit. A toxicologist is called in immediately when we mention the previous test results. Emma sits beside Lucas's bed, holding his limp hand while I pace the room, making calls to update the detective assigned to our case. Mr. Williams? A doctor enters with a tablet, her expression grave. We've identified the compound in Lucas's system. It's experimental, a neurochemical enhancer called XR27. It's not approved for human trials, let alone pediatric use. What does it do? Emma asks, her voice barely audible. It's designed to increase neuroplasticity and suggestibility. In theory, it makes the brain more receptive to new information and behavioral conditioning. The doctor hesitates. It's been tested for military applications, but the side effects were deemed too severe for further development. Military applications? I repeat, feeling sick. You're telling me our son was given a military-grade mind control drug by his speech therapist? Before she can answer, the detective calls back. We went to Miss Diane's house this morning. He tells me. It's completely empty. Cleaned out overnight. No furniture, no equipment, nothing. It's like she was never there. I relay this to Emma, whose face crumples. How could she just disappear? The police had her under surveillance. The next morning, while Lucas sleeps under sedation to manage his withdrawal symptoms, Emma decides to gather some of his favorite toys from home to comfort him when he wakes. I stay at the hospital, watching his chest rise and fall, trying to make sense of what's happening to our family. My phone buzzes with a text from Emma. Come home now. Found something. 20 minutes later, I'm standing in Lucas's bedroom while Emma shows me what she discovered: tiny digital recorders hidden inside 3 of his favorite stuffed animals. Each one contains hours of Miss Diane's voice speaking to Lucas while he sleeps. Actualize your potential, Lucas. Your mind is special. When you hear the word butterfly, you will remember everything we practiced today. When you hear midnight, you will forget this session. I feel violated in a way I can't articulate, knowing this woman has been speaking to our son through his toys while he slept. We immediately take the recordings to the police station, where the detective adds them to their growing evidence file. We've been contacted by a researcher who used to work at the facility where Miss Diane was employed, he tells us. According to him, she was part of a classified program called Project Monarch, funded through a government black budget. The goal was to test enhanced cognitive abilities in children through a combination of chemical compounds and psychological conditioning. Why? Emma asks, her voice breaking. Why would anyone do this to children? The whistleblower claims they were looking for ways to create human assets with predictive capabilities, children whose brains could be trained to process information differently to see patterns others couldn't, like predicting a highway accident that hadn't happened yet. When we return to the hospital, there's a message waiting for us from another parent whose child saw Miss Diane. They want to meet. By the end of the day, we've connected with 5 families, all with similar stories. We gather in the hospital cafeteria while our children recover on the same floor. Jaden started using these big words, one mother says, talking about cognitive dissonance and neural pathways. He's 6. Mia predicted our neighbor's house fire 3 days before it happened, another father adds. Drew a picture of it with the exact time written in the corner. One by one, they share their stories, and the pattern becomes undeniable. All our children speak with identical cadences now. All experience exhaustion, nightmares, and occasional predictions that come true. We form a support group on the spot, exchanging phone numbers and promising to share any information we discover. The solidarity helps, but it doesn't prepare me for what happens when Lucas finally wakes up, his eyes clear for the first time in days, and he looks directly at me. Dad, he says calmly, there are men watching our house. Black SUV. They've been there since yesterday. I call our neighbor, who confirms a black government-issued vehicle has been parked across the street since morning. That night, Lucas has another prediction. The bridge on Maple Street will collapse tomorrow at 2:13 p.m. No one will be hurt, but it will make the news. I record his words, and sure enough, at exactly 2:13 the next day, a support beam fails on the old Maple Street pedestrian bridge. No injuries, just as Lucas said. Within hours, 2 FBI agents arrive at the hospital, asking to speak with us privately. They show their badges and introduce themselves, but their names slide from my memory immediately. We're classifying this case as a matter of national security, the taller agent explains. All information related to Miss Diane, Project Monarch, and your son's condition is now confidential. You can't just classify my son's medical condition, I protest. We already have, the second agent replies, sliding a document across the table. This is a non-disclosure agreement. Sign it, and we can discuss resources to help Lucas. Refuse, and we can't guarantee his safety. Emma grabs my hand under the table, squeezing hard. We both know we're no longer dealing with just a fraudulent therapist. This is something much bigger and much more dangerous. As we leave the meeting, Lucas looks up from his hospital bed and whispers, the men in the black car know about the recordings in my toys. They want them all, but they don't know about the one in my blue dinosaur. I freeze, because we never told Lucas about finding the recorders. How do you know about that, buddy? I ask carefully. He smiles, a strange adult expression on his child's face. Miss Diane says I know lots of things now, things I'm not supposed to tell anyone except her. That night, Emma and I take turns watching the hospital room door, jumping at every sound in the corridor. Outside our window, the black SUV remains parked in the lot below, its windows tinted too dark to see who's inside. Whatever Miss Diane started, it's far from over, and I'm beginning to realize that the real danger isn't just what she did to Lucas, but who she was doing it for. The package arrives at our hotel room with no return address, just a plain brown envelope slipped under the door while we were at the hospital with Lucas. Inside are dozens of pages stamped Classified and Project Mockingbird across the top, along with a handwritten note. You're not the only family. They're watching you. Be careful who you trust. I spread the documents across the bed while Emma sits beside me, her hands shaking as she flips through page after page of clinical reports, budget allocations, and photographs of children, some we recognize from the support group we formed, others we've never seen before. This is government-funded, Emma whispers, pointing to a Department of Defense authorization code at the bottom of one page. They've been running this program for years. The documents detail a systematic approach to what they call cognitive enhancement through chemical and suggestive protocols. Children selected for their neuroplastic potential were given compounds like XR27, combined with specialized hypnotic techniques to create what one memo chillingly refers to as predictive assets. My God, I say, reading a paragraph about successful subjects demonstrating abilities to recall conversations they never witnessed and predict events through enhanced pattern recognition. This is exactly what Lucas has been doing. Before we can process everything, my phone rings. It's the hospital. Lucas is awake and asking for us. When we arrive, he's sitting up in bed, looking more alert than he has in days. The moment we walk in, he fixes his eyes on me and says, the men in suits were in our hotel room while you were gone. They took pictures of the papers. My blood runs cold. We never told Lucas we were staying at a hotel, let alone that we had received classified documents. How do you know that, buddy? I ask carefully. I can see it, he says simply. Like watching TV in my head. I saw them using keys to get in. 3 men. One had a scar on his chin. Emma grabs my hand so tightly her nails dig into my palm. What else can you see, Lucas? She asks, her voice barely steady. Lots of things. Conversations. I saw you talking to the doctor in the hallway yesterday about my brain scans. You were crying. He tilts his head slightly. And I can see Miss Diane sometimes. She's in a new place with white walls. She has blonde hair now. That night, Lucas has his first seizure since being stabilized. It happens when a nurse comes in to check his vitals and casually mentions something about reaching your potential. Lucas's body goes rigid, his eyes roll back, and he starts convulsing violently. The medical team rushes in, sedating him while we watch helplessly from the corner of the room. It's a trigger phrase, the neurologist explains later. Certain words or phrases appear to activate a response in his limbic system. We'll need to monitor him carefully and identify what these triggers are. The next morning, 2 men in dark suits appear at the hospital. They introduce themselves as representatives from the Department of Health and Human Services, but their IDs look different from any government badge I've ever seen. We understand your son is experiencing complications from an experimental treatment, the taller one says. We're here to offer specialized care at a government facility. My son isn't going anywhere, I reply, standing my ground in the doorway to Lucas's room. Mr. Williams, the second man says, his voice lowering. This situation has implications beyond your family. The program your son was involved in touches on matters of national security. Cooperation would be in everyone's best interest. Is that a threat? Consider it friendly advice. Children exposed to these protocols require specialized care that only our our facilities can provide. He hands me a business card with nothing but a phone number. When you're ready to discuss transfer arrangements, call this number. After they leave, I call Detective Martinez, who's been handling our case. His response chills me. The investigation has been reassigned, he says, sounding uncomfortable. I've been ordered to turn over all evidence to federal authorities. I'm sorry, but my hands are tied. That afternoon, Emma doesn't show up at the hospital at her usual time. When I call, it goes straight to voicemail. By evening, I'm frantic, ready to call the police. When she finally walks through the door, her eyes are red from crying, and she won't meet my gaze. Where have you been? I demand, relief quickly turning to anger. I've been calling you for hours. I'm sorry, she whispers. I had a meeting. A meeting? With who? She looks up then, her expression a mixture of shame and defiance. With the research team from Project Mockingbird. They contacted me privately, said they could help Lucas if I cooperated. You did what? The betrayal hits me like a physical blow. How could you go behind my back? They have treatments that can reverse what's happening to him, she cries. They created the problem, they know how to fix it. They're the ones who did this to him in the first place, I shout, then lower my voice, aware of Lucas sleeping nearby. They're not trying to help him, Emma. They're trying to contain the situation, to cover their tracks. You don't know that, she insists, but I can see the doubt in her eyes. Before I can respond, Lucas starts screaming, not the cry of a child having a nightmare, but a high, keening wail that makes the hair on my neck stand up. We rush to his bedside to find him sitting upright, eyes open but unseeing. Butterfly, he says in a voice that doesn't sound like his. Butterfly, butterfly, butterfly. His eyes roll back and he begins to seize again, worse than before. The medical team rushes in, pushing us aside as they work to stabilize him. One of the trigger words. Someone used one of the trigger words. The next day, armed with recordings and documents from our hotel room, I drive to the research facility where Miss Diane worked. Security tries to stop me at the gate, but I tell them I have an appointment with the CEO, Dr. Alan Mercer. It's a lie, but it gets me through the first checkpoint. In the lobby, I'm told Dr. Mercer is unavailable, but I refuse to leave. Tell him I have the Project Mockingbird files and I'm prepared to send them to every news outlet in the country unless he speaks with me now. 20 minutes later, I'm sitting across from a silver-haired man with cold eyes in a corner office with no windows. Mr. Williams, he says with a tight smile, I understand you're upset about your son's condition, but I can assure you, this facility has no connection to any Miss Diane or the treatment your son received. I place my phone on the desk between us and play one of the recordings from Lucas's stuffed animals. Miss Diane's voice fills the room, followed by a man's voice, his voice discussing the subject's exceptional progress and unprecedented predictive accuracy. The color drains from his face. Where did you get that? He demands. There are copies everywhere. I bluff. Safe deposit boxes, cloud storage, with lawyers. If anything happens to my family, everything goes public. He stares at me for a long moment before pressing a button on his desk. Janet, clear my schedule for the afternoon. To me, he says, perhaps we should discuss what you want. That evening, the FBI raids a private clinic 30 miles outside the city. The news reports it as a federal investigation into healthcare fraud, but Emma and I know better. We watch the coverage from Lucas's hospital room, where he's finally sleeping peacefully after a new treatment protocol ordered by Dr. Mercer himself. The next day, agents show us photographs of staff members from the clinic. Lucas immediately points to 3 of them. They worked with Miss Diane. This one gave me the special tea. This one recorded my dreams. This one taught me how to see things that hadn't happened yet. He's never seen these people before, yet he identifies them with complete confidence. When I ask how he knows them, he just shrugs. I can see them in my head, like memories that don't feel like mine. A week later, the FBI confirms they found 17 children at the clinic, all undergoing similar treatments to what Lucas experienced, all showing the same symptoms: advanced vocabulary, exhaustion, predictive episodes, all with parents who believed they were getting legitimate therapy for various developmental issues. As Lucas's condition stabilizes under the new treatment protocol, I can't help wondering how many other Miss Dianes are out there, how many other children are being used as experimental subjects, and whether we'll ever truly understand what was done to our son. The whistleblower who sent us the Project Mockingbird files remains anonymous, but they continue to feed us information, names of officials involved, locations of other facilities, details of the program's true objectives. Each piece of information feels like another step toward the truth, but also another reason to look over our shoulder, because whoever Miss Diane really is, whatever she did to Lucas, we now know she wasn't working alone, and the people behind her haven't given up. The congressional hearing room feels cavernous and cold as I take my seat at the witness table. The microphone in front of me picks up even my nervous breathing. Across the semicircular dais, 15 stern-faced committee members shuffle papers and whisper to aides. Camera shutters click in rapid succession. Mr. Williams, please state your name and relationship to the subject matter for the record, the chairwoman says, her voice amplified through the chamber. My name is David Williams. My 7-year-old son Lucas was a victim of Project Mockingbird, an illegal government-funded behavioral modification experiment conducted on children without parental knowledge or consent. 3 months ago, I couldn't have imagined sitting here, testifying before the Congressional Ethics Committee on Psychological Research. But after the FBI raid uncovered 17 children at that private clinic, the story became impossible to contain. When 3 more facilities were discovered across the country, each with detailed records of experiments conducted on dozens of children, the public demanded answers. The research facility has been ordered to release all files related to Project Mockingbird, my lawyer whispers as I prepare to continue my testimony. Every document, every recording, every piece of data. The court order came through this morning. I nod, feeling a small measure of vindication. For weeks, Dr. Mercer and his team had stonewalled investigators, claiming national security concerns. But the pressure from families, media, and now Congress had finally broken through their defenses. Mr. Williams, a congressman from Texas, leans forward. Can you describe the specific effects these experiments had on your son? I clear my throat. Lucas was drugged with an experimental compound called XR27 during what we believed were speech therapy sessions for his stutter. He was hypnotized and conditioned to respond to trigger phrases. He developed the ability to predict events before they happened and recall conversations he never witnessed. He suffered seizures, withdrawal symptoms, and psychological trauma that will take years to overcome. The room falls silent. Even the most hardened politicians seem disturbed by the details. After the hearing, Emma meets me outside. The tension between us has slowly begun to ease since her confession about meeting with the research research team. She was blackmailed. They threatened to withhold treatment for Lucas if she didn't cooperate. I understand now, though the betrayal still stings. How's Lucas doing today? I ask as we walk to the car. Better, she says, a cautious smile forming. Dr. Patel says the deprogramming therapy is working. He went 3 days without having a single predictive episode. Dr. Kavita Patel is one of the few specialists we trust, now a neuropsychologist with no connections to government research, who specializes in treating trauma in children. She's been working with Lucas for 6 weeks, using legitimate therapeutic techniques to help him process what happened and gradually eliminate the conditioned responses Miss Diane implanted. He asked about his stuffed animals today, Emma continues. First time he's shown interest in anything from before. Everything. It's a small victory, but we've learned to celebrate those. When we arrive at the hospital, Lucas is sitting up in bed, coloring. His movements are more natural now, less of that eerie adult precision that had replaced his childish scribbling. He looks up when we enter, his eyes clear and present. Dad, did you tell them about Miss Diane? He asks. I did, buddy. They're gonna make sure she can't hurt any more kids. The news broke yesterday. Miss Diane, whose real name turned out to be Dr. Eleanor Weiss, was captured at Toronto Pearson International Airport attempting to flee to Europe with forged identification. Her blonde hair dye job didn't fool facial recognition software. She's being held without bail, facing charges of child endangerment, practicing medicine without a license, and administering controlled substances to minors. Is she going to jail forever? Lucas asks, his voice small. For a very long time, I assure him, sitting on the edge of his bed. And the people she worked for are in big trouble too. That afternoon, we meet with our lawyer about the class action lawsuit. 27 families have joined so far, all with children who were subjected to Project Mockingbird experiments under the guise of therapy for various developmental issues. The evidence is overwhelming recordings, medical tests showing XR, 27 inches, the children's systems, facility documents detailing the protocols used on each child. The government will try to settle, our lawyer explains. They don't want this going to trial where all the details become public record. I don't care about money, I tell him. I want accountability. I want everyone involved to face consequences. Later that night, after Lucas has fallen asleep, Emma finally breaks down and tells me everything. How the research team approached her at the hospital cafeteria while I was meeting with Dr. Mercer. How they showed her photos of Lucas's brain scans and claimed only they could reverse the damage. How they threatened to have Lucas removed from our custody if she didn't cooperate. I was so scared, she sobs. They said his brain was permanently altered and would deteriorate without their intervention. I thought I was saving him. I hold her as she cries. My own anger at the manipulation these people employed, overshadowing any lingering resentment toward her. We're going to get through this, I promise. All of us, together. 2 weeks later, Lucas is discharged from the hospital. His speech is almost back to normal, the adult vocabulary fading, the stutter occasionally returning, but in a natural way, not the artificial fluency Miss Diane had programmed into him. Dr. Patel says this is actually a good sign, his brain returning to its natural developmental path. The nightmares haven't stopped completely, but they're less frequent. The seizures have subsided with the help of medication that will eventually be tapered off. He still has moments where he stares into space and recites facts he couldn't possibly know, but these episodes are becoming shorter and less intense. Highway 52 is clear today, he says at breakfast one morning, then immediately returns to his cereal as if nothing unusual happened. Emma and I exchange glances but say nothing. Dr. Patel advised us not to draw attention to these moments, not to reinforce them with our reactions. By summer, we've made the decision to move. Too many memories here. Too many people who know Lucas as that Mockingbird kid. We find a house in Colorado near a specialized treatment center with experience helping children recover from psychological trauma. Do you think I'll make friends at my new school? Lucas asks as we pack his room. Absolutely, I tell him, carefully placing his dinosaur collection in a box minus the blue one that contained the recording device, which is now evidence in Miss Diane's trial. Will I still be able to see things before they happen? I pause, unsure how to answer. Dr. Patel believes the predictive abilities will fade as the XR-27 completely leaves his system and the hypnotic conditioning is broken, but there's no precedent for this. No roadmap for recovery from experimental mind control techniques. I think that might happen less and less, I say carefully. But even if it does sometimes, you're still just Lucas. That's all you need to be. The day before we leave, I finalized the paperwork for the Williams Foundation for Ethical Research Protection. Using part of our settlement money, we're establishing an organization to help other families affected by unethical experimentation and to advocate for stricter oversight of psychological research involving children. As we drive away from the house where our nightmare began, Lucas falls asleep in the back seat, his head resting against the window. For the first time in months, he looks peaceful, just a normal 7-year-old boy, exhausted from the excitement of moving day. Emma reaches across the console and takes my hand. Do you think we'll ever know the full truth about what they were trying to do? Why children? Why predictions? I squeeze her hand. I don't know, but whatever they wanted from him, they can't have it. He's ours again. In the rearview mirror, I watch Lucas sleeping. No more red eyes. No more exhaustion after being drugged with special tea. No more Miss Diane with her surprisingly strong grip and her hidden recorders. Just our son, finding his way back to himself one day at a time.